Glasgow in the 1970s was a place where strange happenings occurred in the Cross Hill district. Between 1976 and 1979, there were several reported sightings of the Gurning man. Generally seen between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m, he appeared to only target women. Described as tormented, demented and insane, he would appear from nowhere, terrifying them, with one even moving away from Cross Hill, thanks to the fear he instilled in her. Physical descriptions vary slightly, but what each witness described was more like a real person than an apparition. In one account, a middle-aged woman was asleep in her bed, her husband next to her, while her 2 children slept in another room. She woke up as she heard a strange but loud noise. It was snoring, but where did it come from? Initially she thought it was her husband, but that was unusual as he didn't snore. She lifted her head off the pillow, and what she saw terrified her. A man was standing at the end of her bed, lit only by moonlight, rubbing his chest vigorously. He was grinning manically at her. Then he let out an unearthly scream. The horrified woman screamed, waking her husband, and he immediately jumped out of bed, flicking on the light switch to illuminate the room. He asked her what was wrong as she was cowering into her pillow. Slowly she lifted her head, but the man had vanished. This was the second sighting of the strange man in a matter of days. 2 teenage girls had reported seeing a very similar man doing very similar things just 2 days beforehand, only 100 yards from the woman's house. They'd been at a party and were making their way home when they noticed the strange man in the moonlight. They described him as being in his late 50s, skinny and dressed in tight black clothing, described as being like a leotard. They noticed he was bald, for he stood under lamplight, fidgeting and appearing anxious. As they got nearer to him, both of them stopped talking, but their pace increased, their sense of urgency to pass him taking over. In their peripheral vision, they saw him pulling faces, contorting it, which they described as somewhere between grinning and a grimace, as though in pain. He was also snorting and grunting, so the girls broke into a run. One of them threw a look over their shoulder to see if he was following them, but he disappeared into thin air. They couldn't believe it. To them it seemed impossible to just disappear like that. There was nowhere he could have gone so quickly. There were no buildings he could have slipped into, or any road he could have turned off on. He just vanished into thin air, as he did when standing in that bedroom. Another account of the Gurning man took place in front of an elderly lady who was putting her milk bottles out to be collected early one morning. She noticed a stranger standing in the middle of the road, wearing the same kind of outfit as already described. He looked as though he was jogging on the spot, then she blinked and he was gone, again vanishing into thin air, right in front of her. Between 1976 and 1979, there were over 15 reported sightings of this strange man in the Cross Hill area. 11 sightings were outside on the street, while another 6 were in houses. 2 witnesses thought he was a burglar trying to steal their possessions, but there seemed to be no evidence of a break-in and no thief. The Gurning man was quiet for decades, but in the 2000s he seems to have appeared again, this time in Queen's Park. In 2017, a woman living in the area was returning home after visiting some friends. She noticed a man standing on the road between a parked car and van. She described him much as the other women had, but he seemed to be a lot older, somewhere between 70 and 90 she reckoned, and the top he was wearing was very low cut, so much so she could see most of his chest. He was also agitated and was rubbing his chest, snorting and groaning loudly as she got closer. In Queen's Park itself, a group of teenage girls believed they also saw him. They were sitting down when one of them saw movement in nearby bushes. She told her friends and pointed. One of them turned on their mobile phone torch and the light shone where the girl had directed. They saw him, old, spindly, contorted face. They hot-footed it out of there as fast as they could. None of these women knew each other, and none had spoken to any others who claimed to have seen the black-clad figure. Yet all of them, at separate times, gave almost identical descriptions. The strange thing about all this is there is no evidence of the police being informed of the strange man, the alleged break-in, or anything reported in the local or indeed national newspapers. So who was he? Was he a cat thief? Was he just someone who liked to frighten women and took pleasure from it? Or was he a ghost or a paranormal entity? After all, Glasgow is well known to be haunted. More likely, the Gurning Man of Glasgow is a modern-day folk tale, but no one really knows where the story comes from or whether it's true or not. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.